allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My name is Chris Steven. I'm the city attorney for Greensburg, and as this is the first meeting of the year for the Board of Zoning Appeals, we have in front of us the election of officers for this year. So at this time, are there any nominations for the position of president of the BZA?
Nominate Alan.
Alan's been nominated. Is there a second to that nomination?
I'll second.
There's a second. Alan, if there's no other nominations, will you accept that nomination?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, are there any comments on or discussion regarding Alan as the president? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve and install Alan as the president. So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We also have the position of vice president. I would accept nominations for the position of vice president of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I nominate Philip.
There is a nomination of Philip. Do I hear a second?
Second.
There is a second. Philip, if there's no other nominations, will you accept that nomination? Okay. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no additional nominations, are there any discussions or comments with regard to that nomination of Philip as vice president? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the installation of Philip Dywert as the vice president. So moved. There's a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The meeting is yours, Mr. President. Wait, do I have to vote for secretary? Yes, I do have to vote for, no, there's no secretary in BZA, we're good. I think we're good.
Well, there is, but
It's
we
her.
don't have to.
Yeah, it's you, so you're not, yes, we're good, thank you.
We're gonna open a public hearing on the temporary special exception from Speranza Inc. at 728 North Broadway. And I would like to call Jennifer, or allow Jennifer to come up and explain to us exactly what this is about.
Thank you. If you'd have told me 6 years ago that this would have been my third time coming before the BZA for getting a variance for Speranza, I would have said, no way, we won't be that far along. So very excited to tell you that we've had such good success with our first two houses. So just a little history. We opened for accepting residents in October of 2018 at 231 East Washington, and we were there until 2020. I think it was July of 2020. We chose to purchase 132 West Central, so that we no longer rented the Washington location, and we now we own the West Central location. We have had so much demand for bed space, and looking at our finances, we really felt like we could buy a second house and maintain two houses. So this would not be replacing West Central. This would actually be in addition to. So right now, West Central, I believe we can accommodate 12 women, and that includes our night manager. The new house, we're estimating that we will add an additional 15 beds for a total of 27 residential clients at any given time. So basically doubling our capacity, which is very much needed. I think the last time I checked with our staff, we had anywhere from 34 to 40 people on a wait list. Also, we have received a lot of positive results from other counties, believe it or not. I was attending a custody hearing for one of our residents in Hancock County, and shortly after we had that hearing, Hancock County Probation actually contacted us and asked to take a tour because the judge was so impressed with her results, and they wanted to see what we were doing. They were very impressed with our program. Humble brag, but I do feel like that Speranza is probably one of the top women's recovery residences in the state. We really work hard to achieve all of the state's goals and objectives. We are right in the process of going through our Indiana National Association of Recovery Residences is our licensing board, and we are in the process of getting our certification renewals, so we're right in the middle of that. We don't anticipate having any problems getting our certification renewed. We are considered a level 3 recovery residence. The only higher level that you could be would be to actually have medical staff on staff, so like a hospital or I think if you've ever heard of Terra Treatment Center or something like that, we're not to that level, but never say never. We always aspire to do bigger, better, more. So what we are asking right now, we have purchased 728 North Broadway. Little history, this in its heyday was a beautiful Victorian home on one of our main thoroughfares here in Greensburg. It was owned for years and years by the Bruns family. We purchased it from the Bruns estate. The mother had passed away, and she hadn't lived in that house for quite some time. I think they were running it out to tenants. And when she passed away and the estate took it over, they brought in ServPro because there had been a lot of animal contamination in the first floor, and ServPro notified them that there was also methamphetamines contamination in the second story up in one of the bedrooms, and so they had to do extensive remediation. I mention this because some citizens may rightfully have concerns about, well, what would this, what kind of house would this be, and what kind of people would be living in it? And I'm concerned about having, felons living next to me. Well, the reality is there was active drug use going on in this house, in this very location, probably unbeknownst to the very neighbors who were living next to it. So I want to kind of assure those who may have concerns about this type of a program that we are actually a better place, because the women who are living in our house are actively seeking recovery. They are actively being drug tested. They are actively reporting often to probation officers. We have great relationships with all of our law enforcement. A lot of the participants will be going through our wellness court, which is now a big countywide program. And so we are actually helping to reduce those problems in our community. I think my numbers change on the daily, so I think the last time I checked, we had 103 women who have participated in our program, and I think what my staff told me is that I think there's only been 9 who have re-entered in the criminal justice system. I mean, that's a phenomenal result. I don't think very many other programs could have that type of a success rate. I challenge anybody to try to find statistics that are anywhere close to that. I think nationally, when they look at anybody who's attempted recovery, the success rate's only about 5% on average. So it really goes to show that we have put together a really good program, and we do try to partner with a lot of the other organizations in the community to ensure that our clients are getting the best possible treatment and the best likelihood of success. We do open it to any resident. They don't have to be a Decatur County resident or a City of Greensburg resident, but the majority of those who come into our home become active, employed, working people in our community, and they stay here and they move their families here, and they are good employees. They are productive members of our community. So we feel that we are providing a vital service to the City of Greensburg, and we every single client who is a resident in our program has to sign a good neighbor policy. So they are told right up front what they are expected to do to be a good neighbor to the other people around them. And that is actually a requirement for the INAR. We follow that standard, and every single resident does have to actually sign that policy saying that they understand that this is a residential neighborhood. They are to act in accordance with that and have good, be a good neighbor. So I think other people have talked to me about, well, what about, how does that affect our home values? As I mentioned, this home itself, when we had it appraised, when we were getting ready to buy it, it appraised for $100,000, primarily because of the methamphetamine stigma. So we were already talking about what I would consider going into becoming a blighted home if somebody wasn't going to take this over. We're taking this over. We're going to rehabilitate the house just like we are going to rehabilitate the women who live there. And our goal is, after we've done all the renovations, the house should value at $300,000. So it'll be one of the higher valued homes along Broadway. So this is definitely not an issue of lowering the home values or anything of that nature. And again, accountability, we hold our residents accountable. We've had, like I said, we've had good relationships with the law enforcement, and it's definitely a program that's needed, not just for Decatur County, but for the entire state of Indiana. And I hope that as you've seen how we've done when we're on Washington and how we have performed when we're in Central and we're still there, that we have done nothing but make the city proud. And I know we just came up for our actual, because we had the temporary variance at Central, and that was approved unanimously to make that a permanent variance. And for those in the audience who are listening who may not be aware how this works, it's not a rezoning. It is we're asking for a variance that would run with Speranza. So if Speranza were to ever vacate the premises, then it would still be zoned as single family dwelling. So another organization like us couldn't just come in and take over. They would have to go through the same process and show that they're running a program like we're running in order for you guys to grant them that variance. So that's all we're asking. I believe right now it would just be, again, a 1-year temporary variance, so it forces us to prove that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. As far as traffic, it is already on Broadway. It's one of the reasons why we liked this house, as opposed to, we looked at one on East Street. We also looked at one on Franklin Street, and those we were concerned about. Those are roads that don't have as much traffic and maybe not as much parking, and so those were houses that we chose not to make bids on for that very reason. This house is on an alley, and it has a detached garage, and it has a lot of space in the back so that we can accommodate our residents' cars. But this will be most likely the house that we house our phase 1, 2, and 3 residents, and phases 1 and 2 aren't even allowed to have a car. So there will be less parking for this house than there is at the Central. And we have a great relationship with the church that's next to the Central Avenue house. They have parking that's right there, and they allow our residents to park in that parking lot. So if we needed to, we can always ask the Broadway residents to park near the Central house if we had to. So we have means to address any of those types of concerns as far as traffic flow or parking or any of those concerns. So I would open it up to you guys if you have any specific questions that I haven't addressed, but I think our track record shows that we are a good gamble for the city.
What's the average stay of a resident?
Right now, an average stay would be about 6 to 9 months, and then we add an additional 3 months of aftercare. So even after they've moved out, they're coming back at least once a week to meet with their peer recovery coach, and they're often also attending MRT. And that is one of the benefits of this Broadway house, is there is this going to be a space to actually have a large enough classroom to help accommodate having everybody meet all in one place, and or also continue to expand offering our programming to non-residential clients. That is something we've slowly been rolling out, because there are, there's more need than we can accommodate on a residential basis. And so if somebody wants to participate in our program, we will accommodate that so that they can also get the services they need, just maybe not get to live there.
Just an observation that the property up on Central and Davidson, the change in that, you guys took that over, was amazing. It's a definite plus for the area.
Yeah, we've maintained the property. I think there's even an alley next to that one, and I know we pay to have some improvements to that alley. So, we pledge ourselves to being a good neighbor and doing, and I would think that's something we would need to budget as well for this house that's a gravel alley. And I know when we had our ribbon cutting, it was a really cold, rainy, icy day, and that's when you saw the kind of potholes really standing out in that alley. So that may be something that we would be willing to help contribute and show the neighbors that, look, we want to be a good neighbor.
What's your timing as far as occupying the house?
Well, they kind of laughed at me, and I said, I would love it if we could get in by the end of March, because that will be our 6th anniversary. I think that's probably awfully optimistic, but we've received a grant here recently from the INARR that would require us to use the grant by August. So, it'd be nice to be in there April, May, June, somewhere in there. But we also have to get approved by the INARR, and we also have to go through the state fire. I don't know if that's right, but because of the change of occupancy, we have to get state approval for that.
Prevention.
Yes, and we always hire a consultant and an engineer to help us with that. We don't just wing it, we do it right, and we do it professionally, and we've always done it. It costs us a lot, but it's worth it to know that we've met all of the codes. And ingress, egress, they require us to put in wired in smoke detectors and like the security systems, and all of that is required. So it'll take us a little while. It's not going to be tomorrow, that's for sure.
You said you have a mixture of phase 1, 2, and 3 residents. I mean, because obviously with the parking issue and traffic, the phase 3 would come into that. But what's the
Right, so
number of those
by
roughly?
phase 3, so the house only holds would only hold up to 15 right now. So the first 60 days, they're not even able to drive. So it's a really good question. So I'm trying to think at our current house, I don't think, like, we have 12 beds, I don't think we have 12 cars. So a lot of them don't have cars until they're ready to move out. So it's hard to say. It could be, maybe 6, but again, we have in the back of they might not even need to be parking on the street, because the way it's configured with the detached garage, there's a lot of gravel parking on our property that they can park on.
I live about 5 houses down from
Okay.
there, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I can definitely see that as a concern, and if we start to feel like that, the car parking is an issue, we can make the resident park their car over at the church instead of parking on Broadway or behind the house. So that's the good news, is we can control that pretty easily, because we're not giving out the Central Avenue house.
Thank you very much. Anyone else out in the audience have anything that they would like to say about this? Please come up to the mic and state your name.
My name is Chad Scudder. I live at 736 North Broadway, which is 2 houses down. And I have a lot of concerns about putting a sober living house 2 doors down from me. She touched on most of them, and I'd like to go through them again. Traffic is a big issue for me. We have children that live adjacent to that house that ride their bikes up and down the alley, play out there. All the neighbors that live there now are pretty cognitive of they need to be slow coming through there, things like that. You're talking about adding up to 15 women in this house, constantly changing in and out. They may not have that same recognition. When we discuss property values, well, she may think it may be worth $300,000. You're adding a hurdle to a potential buyer for me, having a sober living house 2 houses down. I have 2 children, they're 16, 17 years old. We'll be downsizing here next 10 years or so. That's something I will have to deal with when I go to sell my house. Is that a hurdle for someone or a potential buyer? Will that turn them away? How much money will I lose on that? There's, not to be mean, but let's just get down to it. We're putting potentially up to 15 felons in that house. I spoke with a gentleman who is a neighbor of the house over by St. Mary's. And I don't think they're quite the same thing, but in principle, I believe they are. And he told me that some of those residents, he's got several of those residents milling around on his porch. You can sign paper saying you're not gonna do things like that, but that don't necessarily mean you're gonna live up to it. I have some very serious concerns about this house coming in. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I received a letter from Jane Scholl and Jennifer Schutte that I wanted to share. I've already shared it with you in your packets, but I'm going to read it so it can reflect on the record. Their concerns or questions they have, which Jennifer has already answered most of them. Safety, people can relapse, and when they do, they can be unpredictable. There can also be altercations from outside sources with the residents at the sober living house. What is my safety since it is right next door? Privacy, they were told that there would be security cameras placed on the outside of the house. They want to know how far will they go? Will it be into my house if the windows are open or in the yard? If they travel that far, this is an invasion of privacy. The concern of traffic, if there are going to be 15 women living in the house, and I assume a staff member, where will they all be parking? As well as lots of coming and going. Keeping the alley open at all times was a concern. Selling potential. When I purchased this house years ago, I was purchasing a home in a residential neighborhood. I'm concerned about my property value going down. I, and I know others, would not willingly purchase a home next to a sober living facility. Who would want to purchase mine when that time comes? And that is just to share for the record. I did ask Police Chief Mike McNeely to be here this evening to answer any concerns as far as safety, the amount of calls that they get from the current Speranza House on Central Street, and maybe that'll ease some of the concerns that people have. So, Mike, if you want to come up.
I'm Mike McNeely, I'm the chief of police here. I need to ask one question. How long have you guys been there, Jennifer?
3 years, I think.
3 years. So I did check the calls. In 3 years, we've received one call at that place, and it was a resident that just needed some mental health help, and they were having trouble convincing that person that they needed help, so we responded and helped them. Not received any other calls to that residence or to that area for any type of issues from the residents of Speranza. I did have someone personally come up to me and ask and say that they were concerned about the parking in the alley. We addressed that with a staff member at Speranza, and it was taken care of within about 2 days, where there were no more parking complaints or issues. One of my staff sits on the wellness court that you heard spoken of earlier. They meet regularly with members that are in that program. The female members that are in that program are all members of the Speranza House. I've sat in on some of the public hearings involved with that, and to hear the accountability that these ladies have is amazing. I mean, accountability more than what most parents have with their teenagers. And I hear them and don't get me wrong, these were people at one point in their life that didn't have a lot of rules in their life. And so they have to go back and they have to learn the rules. And what we're seeing come out of the programs, not only in this house, but other houses, and I can't speak for all of them, but some of the other houses in this community is amazing, and it's doing amazing things for the people that have had problems with their pasts that want to change. And they have the ability to say no. They don't just let everybody in. They have the ability to say no. So if they think that it's not a good fit in their home, or this person's going to cause problems, they can say no. And so, again, we've had one issue, and it wasn't even an issue. It was just they needed some help convincing somebody. So do you guys have any questions for me? I'll be happy to answer anything. I did look at traffic pattern and parking as well. It is a very large lot, one of the largest lots on Broadway Street. It does have parking street side, as well as two, looks like a garage with a parking pad next to it. So I would estimate 4 to 5 vehicles in the back could park, and then 3 to 4 street side. Of course, there's no such thing as reserved parking on the street, so that's first come, first serve, as that is all over town. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do I have anybody else in the audience that would like to say anything? Please approach and state your name for the record.
My name is Doreen Grivey. I'm the Decatur County Assessor. And I would just like to address the property values. In my office, we get every sales disclosure of every sale of every house in Decatur County, including Greensburg. And in the 3 years that we have been at our Central Avenue address, the houses that have sold around it, I can assure you, and I can even show you the sales, you just have to come to my office, that they have not declined. And as you are all aware, housing in Decatur County is very slim, and so it does not diminish the values of your houses by being next door to a sober living house. So I just wanted to let you know that. If you have any questions for me as far as the values, I'll be happy to answer those as well.
Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I take my city attorney hat off for a moment and just be a citizen? I don't often do that, but as a public defender in this county, I have seen what Speranza does for their residents. Her recidivism rates are on point, they are accurate. It is a process to get in it. It involves application, it involves interviews. It is not simply we let everybody in. I certainly understand what the other citizens have stated. And in fact, the other facility that Mr. Scudder referenced, I do not believe that they have the same stringent requirements that Speranza does. This is a good thing for our community. It is a good program. And I say that being someone who would say that if they wanted to put this next door to my house, I would absolutely open them with open arms. It is a very, very good program, and there are people in this community that desperately need it. And to ever go listen to some of the people that the lives that they've changed is phenomenal. And I apologize, like I said, I don't often take off my city attorney hat, but I am a citizen and a resident and business owner, and I think that needed to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer, I have a question. You can probably sit there. Is there a curfew for the residents?
Well, they are actually on GPS monitoring, and for their first 60 days, they can't even leave the house unaccompanied. So once they moved into phase 3, they have to turn in schedules. So it's hard to say curfew because if they work a second shift or something like that, it's a little different, but they have a lot of meetings to go to in the evenings, so they're accompanied, we provide transportation. And I did want to also address, we want to be clear, we are not sober living. That is a legal term. We are we are recovery residents, and we are licensed by the state of Indiana. So a sober living is just a group shared home where they all commit to living sober. We actually make them do programming. So it's, as Mr. Stevens said, it is an application process. They have to commit to staying clean and sober. If they fail a drug screen, they automatically have to leave the house and reapply. If they commit a new offense, they automatically have to leave the house and reapply. If they can't follow the rules, they may have to leave the program. I mean, and when I say rules, we've had people have to leave because they refuse to do dishes and do their chores. That is how strict it is. I mean, these are not, they're held more accountable than any other neighbor you're gonna have.
Is there anyone else? If not, I will close this public hearing. Today is Tuesday, February 6, 2024, and the time being 7:30. The meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals is called to order at this time. Please silence all electronic devices. To comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the city requests participants in this meeting complete a voluntary anonymous survey that is available on the table in the back of the room. Amber, would you please do roll call?
Alan.
Here.
Philip.
Here.
Ken.
Present.
Dick.
Here.
Rick.
Here.
Okay, we all received a copy of the minutes from the November meeting in our packets. Does anybody see any corrections, additions, or subtractions that need to be made? If not, can I just approve the minutes?
Approved as presented.
Approved as presented. Being no old business, the new business we have is Speranza Inc., 728 North Broadway, a temporary special exception to operate a recovery residence for women. And I just wanted to say, when everybody was talking about a variance, they were talking about a special exception, which basically means it's zoned one way, but you can have something else in it. Is that right?
Well,
Sarah?
It's
not 100, that's not 100%. So a variance would be, a special exception is that there is some part of the zoning requirement that they are not able to necessarily meet. So in this instance, a R2 zoning would only allow a certain number of people living within a certain residence before it would become a multi-use type or multi-family type residence. In this case, the exception that they're seeking is to have the ability to have 15 residents in the home. So it's different than like if I were to have an R2 residence and I wanted to operate a business out of it. That is a variance because I'm doing something from a different zoning than what it is. This would still be considered an R2 zoning. It would have a special exception to allow the number of people living in it.
And this goes with the current owner, so if they would sell the house, does that special exception go with?
Correct. It is
Okay,
for the
so it
current
doesn't stay
owner.
with the house.
Yes, it does not run with the property, so if the property were to transfer ownership, they would no longer have that special exception. Additionally, because it is a special exception, it is done as a temporary special exception for a year, and then they will need to come before this board again to ask for a permanent special exception after a year.
Okay, does any of the board have any questions, comments? We had a few of them, or a few of the questions, comments at least, answered during the open meeting, public meeting. Does anybody else have anything? The only thing I would like to say about this is that the way I see it, this special exception, this particular one, not necessarily just to Speranza, but put us, the board and the city, in kind of a impossible position, being that this was pretty well publicly rolled out, before everything was done. There is a certain process, and I am not just singling out Speranza, but there is a certain process that needs to happen for stuff like this to go through the way it should. Being in an impossible position, as you saw tonight, we had some people that had concerns about it. We run the risk of them looking at us saying, they won't listen to us anyways. So, or we run the risk of the person applying for it saying, we don't want whatever it is. The one thing that I see that needs to happen is it needs to be done in a certain way, because you don't want to put the boards or any board or agency or city or the city into this position being, either a yes or no. And I just feel that this could look bad for a lot of people in different ways. And that's all I have a problem with. As for what it is, I don't have a problem with it. I just think it needs to be done so we're not setting a precedent for that to happen all the time. I think it needs to be done on a case-by-case basis. So.
Alan, I have one more question, really
Sure.
for Chris. When does the clock start on the special exception? Tonight, or is it?
If it was approved, it would be tonight, yes.
So it would be when it was approved versus when they moved in, or when they took possession of the house or whatever.
Yes, because certainly Speranza as an entity is able to purchase property, do whatever it wishes to do. And I certainly appreciate your point, Alan, that there needs to be a timing. But yes, the special exception does not take effect until this board approves it. So it would take effect tonight when if it were approved, it would take effect tonight. It would not have any retroactivity to when the house was purchased.
Or occupied.
Correct. It is from now for a year.
So they'll need to come back in a year.
They will need to come back in a year, yes.
So does anybody else have any questions or concerns? Then I will take a motion to approve this special exception.
So,
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Amber, would you please take roll call?
Philip,
yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
Alan.
Yes. Your special exception has been approved. Being no other business, Sarah, do you have anything?
Just a couple of things. You received a copy of the UDO, and along with that, just a reminder, we are having our training on Tuesday evening from 5:30 to 7:30 in the multipurpose room. Be sure to bring your copies there that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. I will take a motion to dismiss.
So moved.
We're done. Thank you.